Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Danielle, aka Stitcherista here on YouTube, and today is Thursday, February 1st. So happy February, going into the second month of the year. Today is going to be another WIP and chat and true crime story time where I will probably read 2 stories and we're just going to chat in the beginning just to talk about some stuff. So an update on the foot saga. So let me tell you, I've never had to wear a boot before. What a giant pain in the ass. Let me tell you. So anyone who has to wear one, I completely sympathize now. I like to think that when stuff like this happens, it's God's way of slowing you down, right? Like, this is not how I thought my week of vacation would be. I can tell you that. So when I was at the foot doctor yesterday, he said, I'm going to write this down on a piece of paper for you. You need to go home and order it for your other shoe that will elevate you, because the boot obviously elevates me a couple inches. He said, otherwise you will develop like hip and back issues, because I have to at least wear this boot for the next week until I get my MRI next week. So I was able to, through Amazon, we have a hub that's like 6 minutes down the road, so I can get some stuff very, very quickly. And I was very fortunate. It's called Even Up. I will link it in the description box. So it just straps onto your shoe. You just slip your shoe in it. There's a Velcro thing. It's really easy. But I put it on and I thought, dear Lord, I am now like a walking contraption. And Bill came in, he's like, what the hell is that on your shoe? And he said, hardly anybody wears those. I'm like, really? But I am. It was like $34. So I took a picture and I sent it to my mom and she was like, wow, this is turning into something, isn't it? Yeah, it is. But if it's going to help my foot, it's worth it, obviously. I am really hoping that nothing major is wrong. So what I've been doing is obviously trying to stay off my foot as much as I can, but it is so much easier to walk with the boot with that lift on the other side. And it's amazing. I did not realize how many times I get up and down during the course of a day until I have this on my foot. And Bill went back to work today. And today's trash day, so normally I will bring the bins back in, but I told him on the phone, I said, they're not in the middle of the street, thank God, because sometimes they are. Once the trash and recycling, they'll just not push them to the side. He said, no problem, I'll get them when I get home. I emptied the dishwasher, I made tea. I said, I'm not going to do laundry today because he didn't work yesterday, so there was no uniform. I said, I will do laundry tomorrow, because to do laundry, we have a split foyer, so we have stairs in the center of our house that separate the house. And again, I didn't realize how many times I go up and down the stairs in the course of a day until I'm trying to do this in a boot. I am extremely slow because I'm taking step by step by step by step. So yeah, laundry's not being done until tomorrow. I did some work stuff this morning, just a couple little things. And I am sitting here now. I'm still in pajamas and it's about 10:45 a.m. I am going to take a shower today, but I am just sitting here. I was reading, playing bingo on my iPad, that kind of stuff. I mean, there is a lot of sitting with this. Like I said, I'm very glad that I don't have pets to take care of or children here in this house to take care of, and that I just have to worry about myself. And, that I'm off this week. I can, no problem sitting. I mean, I don't need my foot for work, but I'm just glad I can actually sit with my foot propped up, this week. So, yeah. I've been getting some good sleep though. Like, I slept pretty good last night. Just trying to rest as much as possible. But okay. So, do you guys remember fruit stripe gum? I remember it as a kid. It came in 5 different flavors, I want to say, and it lost its flavor very quickly, but it came in like a big pack of gum. Well, it's discontinued. And so I was just scrolling here on Facebook and someone said, my favorite childhood chewing delectable has been discontinued and so the gouging begins. And there is a listing on eBay for a case of fruit stripe gum, which is 16 boxes of it, for $2,400 plus $44 shipping. Are you insane? Have your cuckoo crazy pants banana pants? No, ma'am, sir, no. No, 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 no. I don't want gum that bad. No. Now, and you guys know that I have been doing low carb intermittent fasting, and I have been very fortunate. I've been losing weight pretty steadily. I've lost 9 pounds in the month of January, and I stepped on the scale today and I lost another pound. So officially, I'm down 10 pounds, which is good. But I miss like pasta and rice, and I tried riced cauliflower yesterday. Not the same. Not the same. So I did some research last night. I watched a bunch of YouTube videos when I got in bed because there are alternatives out there. So they are sort of pricey, but I ordered, and the company is called Kaizen, and they make low carb rice and pasta. So the YouTube videos that I watched, I wound up ordering from Kaizen's website directly, I think. No, I didn't, because they want you to buy a 4-pack. I only wanted to buy a box of each. I bought the cavatappi and I bought the rice. So it is made from, it's plant-based. It is made from lupini flour. Let me see if it says it. Yes, you are watching me diamond paint, but this is a voiceover, so I'm on my iPad at this very moment. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's lupini flour. Yes, that's what it is. And for the cavatappi, for one serving, it's 130 calories, 6 grams of net carbs, 20 grams of protein. Now, I have had chickpea pasta, which isn't bad if you really want it. I've never had a good rice substitute. So I watched a bunch of videos yesterday where someone tried out the cavatappi and then someone tried out the rice and they fried it like made fried rice. They both said it was really good. I am very excited to try it. So I will let you know when I get it. But yeah, it would be nice to, like, there is chicken tikka masala that I get from Costco that is low carb, and it's, you know, the chicken in the sauce. It's fantastic over white rice, and obviously with eating low carb, I'm not eating white rice. So, but yeah, so let's get into some true crime. Okay. The first one is Iva Kroger. In December 1961, Detective John Kaufman was investigating the disappearance of a Santa Rosa, California motel owner named Mildred Arneson. Mildred was a retired nurse who had used her life savings to dabble in real estate and had become quite good at it, eventually acquiring a property portfolio that would be worth over $1 million in today's money. The jewel in the crown of this empire was the Santa Rosa Motel, which Mildred herself managed, while also caring for her disabled husband, Jay, a retired U.S. Army major. Jay was afflicted with Parkinson's disease. Fortunately, Mildred's medical training allowed her to give him the best possible care. Mildred Arneson appears to have been an independent and accomplished woman. However, despite her obvious business acumen, she held some kooky beliefs. She was deeply into spiritualism, mediums, and astrology, and had often expressed a desire to travel to Brazil to further her knowledge on the subject. Well, you know, none of that is kooky. But I guess we're going to get more into that, what this person considers her kooky beliefs. In mid-1961, she told her family that she was planning just such a trip with a woman she had met, a fellow spiritualist named Iva Long. She had then apparently departed for South America and had not been seen or heard from since. What? Okay. The obvious place for Detective Kaufman to begin his investigation was at the motel owned by Mildred Arneson. There he was surprised to find Iva Long, the woman who had supposedly accompanied Mildred to South America, running the place. That's sus, right? Long had a ready explanation for this. She said that Mildred's spiritual pilgrimage to Brazil was a ruse. The motel owner's real intention was to escape her infirm husband and failing business. To this extent, she had sold the motel to her good friend Iva and then left the country. As part of the deal, Iva had agreed to take care of Jay. As far as Iva knew, Mildred was still in South America. She then showed the detective a deed of sale for the motel, which appeared genuine. Despite Kaufman's suspicions, there was nothing to carry the missing person case forward. The investigation had stalled even before it had begun. So that's a little suspect, but it all seems to check out, right? But then in February 1962, there was another disappearance. This time, it was Jay Arneson who vanished. Again, Iva Long had an explanation. She said that a Cadillac had arrived at the motel one day and that two, quote-unquote, hospital orderlies had loaded Jay up and driven away with him. What? Okay. Asked to describe these men, Long would say only that they were Hispanic. She had allowed Jay to go with them, she said, because the men claimed to be acting on Mildred Arneson's instructions. They were to transport Jay to a care home in Southern California. Again, this sounded suspicious. Again, the police had nothing to disprove Long's story. Yeah, I mean, how would you disprove that? That's so bizarre, though. Over the months that followed, investigators continued their inquiries into the disappearances of Jay and Mildred Arneson. They were getting nowhere until May of that year when there was another incident at the Santa Rosa Motel. Iva Long had hired a handyman to carry out some work on the premises. When the man presented his bill, though, Iva refused to pay, instead pulling a revolver and ordering him to sign the invoice as paid in full. The fuck? What? Things might have gotten ugly had a customer not entered the reception at that moment, allowing the handyman to flee. He went directly to the police and reported the incident. By the time officers arrived at the motel to question Long, they found that she was gone. So she just abandoned the motel? What? And there were other things that the police found out about the gun-toting innkeeper. For starters, her name wasn't Iva Long. She was Iva Kroger, a petty criminal and fraudster with a record dating back to 1945. Kroger seemed to have an affinity for the nursing profession and had earned her first arrest in 1954 for stealing $1,400 from a San Jose care home. $1,400 in 1954? A lot of money, I'm guessing. Whole lot. She had gained a position at the facility using forged credentials. Frightening. Kroger's specialty, though, was to play on the sympathy of her marks. She faked a limp, claiming that she had been crippled in a streetcar accident. Kind of like Ted Bundy, faking an injury to get women to come to help him, and then, yeah. She told people that she had cancer and that she was going blind. No, don't lie about stuff like that. She claimed to be a Jewish refugee who had fled Berlin just ahead of the Nazi tyranny. All of these stories were lies, of course, but Kroger played them to the hilt, using them to pull off various scams. Once she even persuaded a renowned breeder to part with a prized purebred puppy. She claimed that the dog was going to a crippled 7-year-old orphan. Then she took the pup and sold it for $50. What? Given Iva Kroger's skill as a con artist, her talent for assuming identities, her ability to live by her wits, the police knew that they were going to have a hard time finding her. Their first stop was at the San Francisco residence she shared with her husband, Ralph, at 490 Ellington Street. Ralph Kroger insisted initially that he had no idea as to his wife's whereabouts. But he became a lot more cooperative when he learned that Iva had cleared out $8,000 from their joint account. Then he suddenly remembered that she had hired a handyman to dig a hole in the basement of their home. Wouldn't you question that? If I said to Bill, I need to hire someone to dig a hole in the basement, he'd be like, what are you smoking? Yeah. Ralph couldn't or wouldn't reveal the purpose of this evacuation. However, the police had a pretty good idea. They soon returned with a warrant and started digging. Before long, they had uncovered the body of Jay Arneson. Heaven help this woman. Just a little deeper, and their shovels hit something solid. It turned out to be a large trunk containing the corpse of Mildred Arneson. Holy hell! An autopsy would reveal that both of the victims had been strangled with a ligature. That has to be an awful way to die. Mildred had also been struck on the head with a blunt object, possibly a paving stone. Despite protesting that he had had no idea that the bodies were buried there, Ralph Kroger was arrested on suspicion of murder. Of course, come on now. The main prize, though, continued to elude investigators. She eventually showed up several weeks later in San Diego, California, where she tried to scam a couple by claiming that she was a destitute widow trying to care for her disabled 12-year-old daughter. Unfortunately for Iva, the couple had seen her picture in a newspaper article. They contacted the FBI and she was arrested. Good. Brought back to Santa Rosa, Iva Kroger was questioned by investigators and came up with an impossibly convoluted story, even by her standards. She claimed that Jay and Mildred had been killed by a blackmailer who had been fleecing her for years by threatening to expose her criminal past to her husband. Just what the connection was between this mystery man and the Arnesons was never explained, nor how the bodies had ended up buried in her cellar. Both Iva and Ralph Kroger would be convicted of first-degree murder. Ralph was sentenced to life in prison and would die behind bars, still protesting his innocence. Now, do you think he really didn't know? He may not have been involved in it, but he was perhaps harshly treated in all of this, since there is no evidence that he participated in the murders. That said, he must have suspected that something was amiss when his wife ordered a grave-sized hole to be dug in their basement. Yeah. That would have given him the legal obligation to inform the police. As for Iva, well, her story still had a long way to run. She had often boasted to her acquaintances that you can get away with anything if you act crazy enough. At her trial in March 1963, she employed exactly this strategy, ranting and raving, throwing things, singing, constantly interrupting the judge, the lawyers, the witnesses. It was a convincing act, but it didn't work. A court-appointed psychiatrist torpedoed her insanity defense by telling the court that she was entirely sane, although deceitful and manipulative. That reminds me of that movie with Richard Gere and Edward Norton, Primal Fear. Have you guys seen that? Such a good movie. Richard Gere is a lawyer. He is defending Edward Norton, who is on charges for murder. And Edward Norton claims that he has a split personality. It's so good. I'm not going to give it away, but holy hell. Kroger was found guilty on 2 counts of murder and sentenced to death. She was later reprieved from the shadow of the gas chamber and ordered to spend her life behind bars instead. But quote-unquote life would mean just 13 years to Iva. She was paroled in 1974 and promptly dropped out of sight. She briefly reappeared on police radar in 1985 when she was arrested in Florida for threatening a man with a gun. At that time, officers found 2 stolen nurses' IDs in her possession. She was bailed before anyone realized her true identity. Iva Kroger died in 2000. She was 81 years old at the time, leading lending credence to the adage that only the good die young. Wow. I don't know how you live your life like that, like just constantly scamming people, doing bad things. It's crazy, right? Yeah. Okay, now I don't know how to pronounce the last name of this one. I'm going to say Sarah Vercauteren. It's Vercauteren. Vercauteren? Okay. But we're going to say V. Sarah V, because I'm not going to butcher that 3,000 times in this story. So Sarah V was pretty, petite, blonde, 23 years of age, and the mother of a 2-year-old son. Friends described her as bubbly, outgoing, and fun to be with. She had been a good student at school, someone who was considered to have a bright future ahead of her. But then that future was derailed. Shortly after finishing high school, Sarah started using marijuana and graduated quickly from there to harder drugs. By 2012, the young mother was a fully fledged heroin addict. Oh, man. That was a problem for everyone in Sarah's life, but none more so than her 51-year-old mother, Dawn Wagner. Dawn was devoted to her daughter and determined to help her tackle her addiction. She also doted on her grandson. When Sarah told her that they needed a place to stay while she recovered, Dawn had no hesitation in opening her home to them. That was how 3 generations of the family, mother, daughter, and grandson, ended up cohabitating in Dawn's mobile home in Salem Township, Pennsylvania. That reminds me of the movie 4 Days, I think it's called. I watched it on Hulu, and it starred Mila Kunis and Glenn Close as mother and daughter. Mila Kunis was a heroin addict or some kind of drug addict, and her mother had just kicked her out because she couldn't deal with it. Well, the daughter wanted to get clean, and the mother let her come back in, and it's about the 4 days of her going through withdrawal. It was so good. It was so good if you haven't seen it. I think it's still on Hulu. At first, the living arrangements worked well. Sarah seemed determined to get clean, and she got plenty of encouragement from her mother. Dawn was proud of the resolve her daughter was showing, delighted when Sarah found a job working in retail. She loved having her daughter and grandson under her roof and was more than happy to babysit while Sarah was at work. To an outsider, they would have looked like a normal, happy family. But looks can be deceiving. Below the surface, trouble was brewing. First, Dawn discovered a bag of marijuana in her daughter's room, leading to an angry confrontation between the two of them. Then Sarah was caught stealing from her employer and fired. No charges were pressed, but Sarah was delivered to her mother's house that day in a police car. A short while later, Dawn caught Sarah taking money from her purse. That was when she decided that a line had to be drawn. She confided in a friend that she had had enough. She was going to ask Sarah to move out after the holidays. So you know that's not going to go well. That Christmas was not a happy one in the Wagner household. Sarah was struggling with withdrawal symptoms, and she was constantly irritable, pacing up and down like a caged animal. Dawn was dealing with her own demons, struggling with her conscience over her decision to evict Sarah, and also worrying about her grandson's well-being. What future did the child have with a junkie for a mother? This uneasy situation would come to a head on New Year's Eve 2013. Sarah had been particularly tetchy that day. What does tetchy mean? Tetchy means bad-tempered and irritable. Is that how you pronounce it? Tetchy, yes. Or techie, tetchy. Barely able to sit still, picking and scratching at her skin as the withdrawal symptoms intensified. Eventually, she could take it no more. She asked her mother if she could borrow her car. She just needed to buy some weed, she said, something to ease her symptoms to take the edge off. But Dawn had been through this before and knew exactly what was on her daughter's mind. It wasn't weed she wanted to buy, it was heroin. Dawn was not going to be a party to that. She refused to hand over her car keys, leaving Sarah to stomp angrily into the kitchen. Now, an addict's brain is wired differently to that of a non-addict. When the need kicks in, it is all-consuming, supplanting every other necessity. Food, drink, sleep, the well-being of self or loved ones, all of these are trivial compared to the raging thirst for that next hit. Standing in the kitchen on that cold December day, Sarah felt that need, mixed in with a slow simmering rage, at her mother who had denied her the opportunity to feed it. She wasn't thinking straight when she spotted the hammer on the counter, when she hefted it, turned on her heel, and stalked back into the living room. Dawn never saw the attack coming and thus was unable to react. She was caught with a savage blow to the head that spilled her to the floor. Then Sarah was on her, swinging the hammer with the manic abandon of a wild beast in a killing frenzy. Dawn is screaming, "Stop, please stop, I love you, you can take the car, you can take the car." But Dawn wasn't stopping. She continued the onslaught, smashing the brute metal club into her mother's face, smashing tooth and bone, spattering the surrounding surfaces with her mother's blood. Wow. She did not cease until Dawn's features were all but obliterated, until the only sound coming from Dawn Wagner was the gurgle of tortured breath from behind her broken teeth. Then Sarah threw the hammer aside and put her hands on Dawn's throat. She didn't stop squeezing until there was no sound at all. Later, she would claim that she had strangled her mother to end her suffering. Wow. Wow. Dawn Wagner was dead, savagely murdered by her daughter. Now Sarah began a cursory cleanup of the crime scene. First, she bound her mother's legs together with duct tape. Then she dragged Dawn's body into the bathroom. Next, she wiped up the blood, leaving behind as much as she cleaned. Finally, she showered and changed her clothes before waking her son. The little boy wanted to know, "Where's Mom?" "Mom's fine, baby," his mother told him. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth, but at least Sarah had what she wanted. Not just the car keys, but her mother's credit cards, bank cards, and checkbook. Taking these, she packed her son into the car and drove to a nearby gas station where she withdrew $600 from her mother's bank account. Then she drove into the nearby town of McKeesport where she bought some heroin. Afterward, she drove to the Highland Terrace Motel along Route 30 in Irwin, where she would spend the next 3 days in a drug-induced stupor. All the while, her 2-year-old was in the room with her, basically unattended, watching cartoons while his mother got high. By Saturday, January 4th, Sarah's supply of drugs was running low. She also must have realized by now that she needed to dispose of the body because she ended up that afternoon at the Walmart in Delmont. There she used her mother's credit card to buy gloves, cleaning detergent, garbage bags, washcloths, and sponges. The cleanup this time was more thorough but far from perfect. In the meantime, Sarah used her mom's cell phone to send text messages to friends and family members, creating the impression that Dawn was still alive. Oh boy. Over the next 3 nights, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, Sarah remained at the mobile home, sleeping just a few feet from where her mother's battered corpse lay. She avoided the bathroom during this time, instead using a bucket when she needed to relieve herself. She just could not bear to look at her handiwork. On Tuesday, January 7th, she took her son with her into Versailles, leaving him in the car while she tried to rob a Subway restaurant. When that was unsuccessful, she drove to the Olympia Shopping Center, where she held up a branch of PNC Bank, walking away with a paltry $320. That would prove to be the last act of her crime spree. She was pulled over and arrested a short while later. With her son placed in the care of his paternal grandmother, thank God, Sarah was charged with armed robbery and transported to the Allegheny County Jail to await trial. While all of this was going on, Dawn Wagner's work colleagues were becoming increasingly concerned about her. Dawn had failed to show up for work in over a week, and all attempts to contact her by phone had failed. Eventually, on January 9th, someone called Dawn's estranged husband, Larry Wagner, and asked him to check on her. And it was Larry who had the misfortune of discovering Dawn's body. I can't imagine coming in on that scene. On Friday, January 10th, state police officers arrived at the Allegheny County Jail to collect Dawn Wagner and transfer her to the police barracks in Green... Oh, no, that's wrong. They came to collect Sarah and transfer her to the police barracks in Greensburg for interrogation. It took no persuasion at all to convince her to talk. In a taped 50-minute confession, Sarah admitted to killing her mother, sparing none of the gory details. All she could offer in mitigation was that she had been severely affected by the symptoms of heroin withdrawal at the time. Nonetheless, she deeply regretted what she had done and was ready to face the consequences. And those consequences would be harsh. Brought to trial in 2016, Sarah entered a guilty plea to first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. And now her son is going to be raised by the paternal grandmother, I'm guessing. Awful. Just things that people do to one another. So I hope you enjoyed seeing me do some diamond painting and reading these true crime stories. I will do one more tomorrow because I'm off work also on Friday. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section below, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.